My name's Gareth Evans. I'm a director within the financial crime practice and I specialise in fraud prevention. At Psionic, we help individuals, companies, financial institutions and banks protect their money and keep them safe from individuals who are trying to steal their funds. The biggest issue that our customers face today is one of trust. There's always been implicit trust. The banks know who the customer is, the customer knows who the bank is. They have a communication, the individuals trust the bank to look after their money, and the bank trusts that the instructions they're given by their customers is correct and they can do what they've agreed to do with that money. The problem we have today is that fraudsters exploit that trust by sitting between the bank and the individual, convincing the individual that they're the bank or convincing the bank that they're the individual. And so our customers, the banks, don't know anymore if the instructions they are receiving is genuine, and the customer of the bank doesn't know anymore if they are actually speaking to the bank. So as a result, a lot of money is going missing. That money is finding its way into serious and organised criminals. That money is finding itself into places that it shouldn't be going, and our customers don't really know how to prevent that. A lot of the technology that they have relied on in the past is all about understanding that you are not you and looking for those little clues that tell me that it's not you that's doing the instructions. The problem is that with the way that the criminals are now targeting you as an individual, it is you giving the instruction, it is you doing what you believe to be doing the right thing, and that is very difficult for the banks to do something with. So whereas we with Sionic, what we do is we come in and look at your bank, look at your risk profile for fraud prevention or for fraud. We look at the different technologies available to you as an organisation. We work with a lot of these vendors. We put all of this technology together and we are able to help and advise and overcome a lot of these challenges that the customers face. The great thing about Psionic is that we're not tied to a specific technology or to a specific vendor. We have people here who have worked for a number of different vendors. I myself have worked for a couple of different organisations recently, most recently BAE Systems. We have people who have experience at a number of different vendors and technologies. We bring all of that expertise together and we work with a number of different partners and all of these technologies together. So what we bring to the table is not just one technology, one vendor, one approach. We bring the best of a number of different vendors and put them together and give you that holistic view of fraud. And I think that the key of what we bring to the equation is not just the ability to stop one part of the equation, but it's the ability to take a step back, look at the end-to-end view of the entire process and bring together the behavioural profile, bring together the transaction monitoring, bring together the integration that we have across the whole fraud landscape and bring all of that together and then optimise that to give you the best results. There's three key parts that we look at. The first thing we do is a pure consultancy. We can come into your organisation, we can look at your modus operandi, how you work. We can look to see where your risks are from a fraud prevention perspective, from a fraud perspective I should say, and come up with recommendations how to prevent those vulnerabilities from being exploited. We can look at your people, your processes, your technology, and help you understand what your landscape looks like from a fraud perspective and help you put together a roadmap of a plan to get ahead of that, change your strategy. The other thing we can do is help deliver projects. As I mentioned previously, we have a number of partners that we work with. We have experience with a huge range of technologies. We can bring all of those together and we can help deliver the projects for you. Business analysts, project managers, solutions architects, fraud SMEs, specific experts to help you deliver the projects. And not only deliver a single technology, but deliver a number of technologies holistically together. So integrate this technology with that technology and bring them together because we've understood both sides of the equation. The final part that we do, the third part of all of this, is that we can optimize your fraud technology. So we can help do the machine learning and artificial intelligence to augment your fraud decisions. We can optimize your rules. We can tune your rules. We can reduce your false positives, increase your detection rate, and basically take the technology you've already invested in and make that work better and more effective. Well, if you look at the way that traditional fraud detection works, it's very much a rule-based solution. So I look for a pattern based on what's happened previously, and I write a rule that says, if this happens again, then that is indicative of fraud. What machine learning gives us is the ability to move beyond reacting to something that has happened and being more proactive with what may happen. So the technology allows what we call unsupervised learning. So it's not looking at this particular fraud has occurred and therefore I'm looking at a similar pattern to that. It's saying this range of activity has happened and that indicates suspicious behavior. Therefore, I can predict what else might cause suspicious behavior and project that forward, and therefore you become more proactive in your fraud detection than reactive. What we tend to find in banking is there are two real key threats. The first is account takeover. That literally means that I pretend to be you, I get hold of your details, I look online, I look at cyber hacking, I bring all of this information together enough to understand who you are and then replicate you and take over your account and take over your business, which is kind of what an identity twin does. The other key challenge that we have is what we call social engineering, where rather than me taking over your account, I manipulate you into doing my bidding for me. So it is you, it is your account, you are logging in, you are doing everything that you should be doing, but you've been manipulated into doing that by my actions. And this is where you see things like business email compromise and CEO type fraud, where they're targeting small and medium enterprises, but they're also targeting vulnerable people in our society. The elderly in particular are often manipulated into transferring their funds by somebody pretending to be from the bank or from law enforcement or someone else. I think the main thing that makes Psionic better than our competitors is that while we're quite a small organisation in numbers, we have a huge amount of experience. So the consultants that we bring to play within Psionic have all been there and have a huge amount of experience. I've worked in banking, for instance. I've got over 10 years experience working for the banks, doing fraud prevention, investigating cases, dealing with the victims of fraud, understanding the fraud landscape. I've also worked 10 years within the vendor space, delivering fraud solutions to banks. So I've covered both sides of the equation, and now I'm at Psionic. And I'm typical of the kinds of people that we have. It was once described to me that if your car's broken down, Sionic come in and fix your car. Other consultants, they come in and then they give you a report, a 10,000-page report telling you why cars break down. And that fundamentally is what we bring. It's that experience and that ability to come in and do the job and not just come along and consult. I know many victims of fraud. You all know victims of fraud. Almost everybody that I speak to knows somebody who was either a victim of fraud or somebody that's been targeted by fraud. And there's a human being whose life has been devastated because money has been stolen from their account. A lot of the time they're vulnerable people, but even if they're not, businesses go under because of fraud and the emotional and stress that victims of fraud go through is incredible. Ultimately, there are bad people out there doing really horrible things, and I like to think that in my small part, I'm doing something to stop that, and that is why I get out of bed in the morning. I believe that fraud in particular is growing almost out of control. If you look at the exponential growth in fraud across the world, it's not just in the UK or the US. Every country is experiencing an increase in fraud. It's getting harder and harder to prevent because the technology out there is getting easier to get hold of. And if you look at the people behind the vast majority of fraud, you're looking at serious and organised criminals. These people are involved in money laundering, they're involved in drugs, they're involved in terrorism, they're involved in all sorts of the worst things going. And I believe that we have a huge opportunity to do something to prevent it before it gets any further out of control, and I think Psionic are perfectly placed to do that.